All right, so we are going to pull apart this text. I'll do the first 7 paragraphs and then I'll let y'all free for 8. Okay, the title of this is A Quilt of a Country. This is an informational text. Let's get to work. America is an improbable idea, a mongrel nation built of ever-changing, desperate parts. It is held together by a notion, the notion that all men are created equal, though everyone knows that most men consider themselves better than someone. Let's take that sentence apart. America is an improbable idea. Whoa. In this case, improbable is short for, not is short for, means not likely. America is a not likely idea. Not likely to happen, right? A mongrel nation. A mongrel is another word for a mutt or a mixed race dog. Built of ever-changing parts. It is held together by the notion that all men are created equal, though everyone knows most men consider themselves better than someone. I think that's really big, so I'm going to highlight that because that particular sentence is showing just how hypocritical and contradictory the United States can be. So, all right, so I am just annotating. This is what I would write beside. The USA is extremely contradictory. They claim everyone is equal, but do not provide those rights or believe, not so much provide those rights, but they don't actually believe in those rights. All right. Of all the nations in the world, the United States was built in nobody's image, the historian Daniel Borzen wrote. That's because it was built by bits and pieces that seem discordant, like crazy quilts that have been one of its great folk art forms. Velvet and calico and checks and barrage. It's been a long day, y'all, sorry. Out of many, one. This is the ideal. All right, so as you read, you can sort of see how this quilt is coming together. So let's pretend we're looking at a blank canvas or a blank. Let's pretend like we're looking at a blank canvas. I'm worried because I think I've lost my sound, y'all. All right, so I could go on and on adding to this quilt, and actually I will later, to show y'all exactly what it means to have this quilt. But I think y'all get the picture. We are so many cultures rolled into one. But y'all are probably wondering, that's not our point, right? Our point is, what is the central idea of this particular paragraph? Going back to our graphic organizer, I would say that you would look, because we discussed earlier, I forgot to say this, but one of the best places to look for central idea is the first sentence or possibly the last sentence. All right, in this case, I think this is probably not enough to be a central idea. So we're going to look here. America is an improbable idea, a mongrel nation built of ever-changing, desperate parts. It is held together by a notion, The notion of that all men are created equal, even though everyone knows that most men consider themselves better than someone. All right, so to figure out what the central idea of that is, you have to use a little brain power, use a little muscle. We've got to synthesize a little bit. So I am going to say the central idea of that is America can be extremely hypocritical. Cool. Contradictory. They claim, so remember this was actually a note we made earlier, but I think it really rings true as our central idea. They claim they want equality, but don't actually believe in it. And actually, I thought I hit the wrong key. Okay. All right, so let's keep checking. The reality is often quite different. A great national striving consisting frequently of failure. Many of the oft-told stories of the most pluralistic nation on earth are stories of not of tolerance, but of bigotry. Slavery, sweatshops, the burning of crosses, and ostracism of other. Children learn in social studies class the news of lynching of blacks, denial of rights to women, the murder of gay men. It is difficult to know how to convince them that this amounts to crown thy brother with good. Wait, no, sorry. Crown thy good with brotherhood. That amid all of the failures is something spectacularly successful. Perhaps they understand it is at this moment in the aftermath of 9/11 when enormous tragedy, as often does, demands a little time of reflection on enormous blessings. Okay. This particular paragraph kind of rips the Band-Aid off of some of the hypocrisy, right? It talks about and it lists right here a whole bunch of examples. Those are not going to be our central ideas, but I do want to sort of list those and look at those if I can move the bubble. Oh. All right, so we are going to look at we no longer need our quilt. We're not working on quilt. Let's make a quick list here. We had slavery. We had, I already forgot, sweatshops, burning crosses. Wow, sweatshops, burning crosses. Lynching. Lynching. Denial of rights. All of these things are examples of something. They're examples of ways that America is failing to uphold their beliefs, right? And if you think back to our graphic organizer, what was the central idea of the first paragraph? America can be extremely contradictory. They claim they want equality, but they don't actually believe in it. Central idea of number 2, America, I already forgot what I said. Okay, yeah. America is failing to uphold their own beliefs. Okay, cool. Let's keep trekking. This is a nation founded on a conundrum, what Mario Cuomo has characterized as community added to individualism. These two are defending ideals. They're also in constant conflict. Historians today bemoan the ascendancy of the kind of prideful apathy in America, saying that the clinging to ethnicity and background and custom has undermined the concept of unity. These historians have forgotten the past or have gilded it. The New York of my children is no more balkanized, probably less so than the Philadelphia of my father, in which Jewish boys would walk several blocks out of their way to avoid the Irish divide of Chester Avenue. I was a product of a mixed marriage across barely bridgeable lines, an Italian girl and an Irish boy. How quaint it seems now, how incendatory then. The Brooklyn of Fancy Nolan's famous tree, the Newark of the Paternity complained, even the infected wasp suburbs of the Cravers characters. There are ghettos, pure and simple. Do the Cambians and the Mexicans of California exist easily today as they did the Irish and Italians of Massachusetts a century ago? You know the answer. Whew, y'all, that one is a mouthful. Okay. Now, I will go ahead and tell you from here to here, all of that is detail. We're throwing that off the table for central idea. But I do want to discuss right here this first sentence. This is a nation founded on a conundrum. What Mario Cuomo has characterized as community added to individualism. We discussed this earlier, and it's pretty interesting to think about what that means. Because a community is a group of people. And individualism, obviously, you're one person and the way you believe. So therein lies our contradiction. It's a conundrum. That is how our nation was built, on this conundrum, on this contradiction. So these two are our defining ideals, also contrast and conflict. It goes on to say that clinging to ethnicity in background and custom has undermined the concept of unity. So people are clinging so harshly to who they were in the past that it is undermining what it means to be an American. It's undermining the unity of America. Okay, so let's go over here. Let's figure out what our central idea is. So we have America is contradictory. They don't believe in their own beliefs, and then they're failing to uphold their beliefs. But in paragraph 3, it sort of branches off to talk about individualism and how we're so divided. So America, in many ways, is extremely divided by individualism. And we're also going to add subcultures. Okay, let's keep going. What is the point of a splintered whole? What is the point of a nation in which Arab cabbies chauffeur Jewish passengers through the streets of New York, and in which Jewish cabbies chauffeur Arab passengers too, and yet speak in theory of hatred for one for the other? What is the point of a nation in which one part seems to always be on the verge of fisticuffs with another? Blacks and whites, gays and straights, left and right, Pole and Chinese, Puerto Rican and Slovakian. Other countries with such divisions have in fact divided into whole new nations with new names, but not one impossibly interwoven even in its hostilities. I think of all the sentences in that whole paragraph, that is the most important. It is not the central idea, but it is the most important because it is showing that America, for all of the faults we have, and we have a lot, America is the only nation that, despite all of our issues, we have stayed one. We have not broken apart. And that has happened many a time. All right, so for central idea, it's a little bit tricky because all this author is saying in this paragraph is, what is the point? What is the point? What is the point? And you're thinking, but you can't really have a central idea be a question. Well, actually, I'm here to tell you, you can. So what is the point of being one nation if that one nation is so divided? All right, let's keep going. One of these parts was held together by a common enemy, by the fault lines of world wars and electrified fence of communism. With the end of the Cold War, there was a creeping concern that without a focus for hatred and distrust, a sense of national identity would evaporate. That the left side of the hyphen, the African American, the Mexican American, the Irish American, would overwhelm the right. And slow growing domestic traumas and economic unrest and increasing crime seem more like, I lost my fan. Okay. And slow growing domestic traumas like economic unrest, increasing crime seem more likely to emphasize division than community. Today, the citizens of the United States have come together because of the armed conflict and enemy attack. Terrorism has led to devastation and unity. Just a note, this was happening right after 9/11, so that's what they're talking about. Okay. I would like to look at this image. They say, this is a really cool sentence, and I'm actually going to copy it so we can use it. All right, so let's look at this sentence. It's not doing what I wanted to, friends. All right, so a sense of national identity would evaporate, and the left side of the hyphen, African American, Mexican American, Irish American, would overwhelm the right. So for example, let's take Irish, no, I'm going to take Mexican. I don't know why I said it like that, y'all. I'm so sorry. I'm tired. I've been Zooming too long today. It's okay, though. All right, so we have the name, the title, you'd say, Mexican American. This American has been reinforced because we've had this national identity that was brought forth because of the war and trying to protect America. But then the war goes away, and people began to worry that this would overtake this. And suddenly, we would lose that national identity. And instead, someone would say that they were, quote, Mexican. They're not Mexican American anymore. They're simply Mexican. So that was the fear, that after the war, that would go away, that feeling of American. All right, so the idea is America was held together in many ways by tragedy. For example, 9/11. we had a very nationalistic idea of who we were as a group of people because this terrible thing had happened. All right, y'all are doing awesome. We're almost done. Yet, even in 1994, the overwhelming majority of those surveyed by the National Opinion Research Center agreed that this statement, the U.S. is a unique country that stands for something special in the world. One of the things that it stands for is this vexing notion that a great nation can consist entirely of refugees from other nations, that people of different, even warring nations and cultures can live, if not side by side, then on either side of the country. Faced this diversity there is a little point in trying to isolate anything remotely resembling a national character, but there are two strains of behavior that, however tumultuously, there are two strains of behavior that, however tunelessly, abet the concept of unity. All right, so let's look at this sentence right here. One of the things it stands for is the vexing notion that a great nation can consist entirely of refugees from other nations. So we think about that quilt we made. Think about this quilt we made. That everyone in America lived somewhere, well, not currently, what is descended from someone that lived somewhere else, long past, way back and down the line. Your family was either from Cuba. They might have been from Dominican Republic. They might have been from Zimbabwe. They might have been from China or Japan. Any person living, they might have been a Native American, yes, but even then they weren't, quote, American. They might have been Incan, they might have been Mayan, they might have been, I can't think of the Indian groups, the Native American groups that lived here in the Americas, forgive me. Geography and history is not my subject area. But any of those people, they're from somewhere else, right? So a great nation can be created simply from refugees of other nations. All right, so the central idea of this particular paragraph is that America is one of the only nations created of immigrants, of refugees. And it is able to house people of varying beliefs, hence the disconnect already mentioned. All right, we're doing awesome. Let's keep tracking. There's a Calvinist undercut in the American psyche that loves the difficult, the demanding, that sees mastering the impossible, whether it be prairie or subway, as a test of character. And so it glories the struggle of this fascinating and coalescing. And there's a grudging fairness among citizens of Americans that leads most to admit that no matter what the English-only advocates try to suggest, new immigrants are not so different from their own parents or grandparents. Lionel Castillo, former director of Immigration and Naturalization Service, himself a grandson of a Mexican immigrant, once told the writer Studs Treckle proudly, "The old neighborhood ma-pa stores are still around. They're not Italian or Jewish or Eastern European anymore. Ma and Pa are now Korean, Vietnamese, Iraqi, Latin American. They live in the store. They work 7 days a week. Their kids are doing well in school and they're making it. Sound familiar? Looking at that, the most important part here is this. The new immigrants are not so different from our own parents. So think about what you might have heard on the news. Think about the fact that we have such a problem in our country with people not wanting immigrants to come in for whatever reason. This is a real issue we have in the US. Well, the central idea of this particular paragraph is that new immigrants are not different than old immigrants. Our great grandparents. And that all of these immigrants are good and that they've made this nation what it is today. All right, y'all. So that is the end of what we did today in class. Your homework assignment is to go in and do, I miscounted, there are only 8 paragraphs. I know you're so sad you have only 1 paragraph to read on your own. You're going to read paragraph 8 on your own. Give me the central idea. Then tell me what is, there was a loud noise. Then tell me what is the central idea of the whole text. After you finish that, you are going to come in and you are going to write a $2 summary. A $2 summary is not that complicated. It is explained right here. Each word in your summary is worth a nickel. And your summary can't cost more than $2. So you have to summarize that whole article we just read in as little words as possible, but it can't go over $2. All right, y'all, thank you so much for working hard today. Have a good evening.